Oh, Sammy, it's no use. I've just gotta fly. It's in my blood. When I'm up there in that big blue yonder, I feel like Superman.
Oh, my stars!
Up in the sky, it's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's Superman!
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study! I'll never get into Stanford!
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I'm going to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what's the trope we're talking about tonight?
Dun dun dun! Superpowers!
We are talking about Superpowers. This is one that we had at the ready because it was sort of an alternate for when we had our friend Jordan on, the Marvel Comics editor, and we had him talk about comic books in sitcoms, but I was also considering Superpowers because that seemed like the same kind of, seemed like something that would lend itself to that expertise. And so we had these tropes on hand. Now, I'm gonna say that this is maybe not the strongest lineup we've ever had.
Okay, fair.
That this is an example of sitcoms not pulling from real life, like we say some tropes.
Of course, yes.
Borrowing from comic books and other kinds of entertainment. And it does seem to bring out the dumbness of sitcomery, it seems.
I mean, yes, and one of the shows that we watched in this lineup was such a fabulous parody of like an old Batman, but in this updated version that it was like the satire was on point. It was such a surprise because it's a children's show. It was a Disney Channel show. I was truly impressed with that show. And so I feel like that one did it so well that it made the others kind of worth it for me.
Yeah, fair enough. So something that you would think at a glance like, oh, sitcoms do this all the time, at least like the silly ones. But, you know, there were a lot of sort of like, psychic powers. Do you consider that a superpower?
Right.
Like, there were not as many examples to choose from as we would have thought.
Right, because a lot of sitcoms don't want to go this broad.
The examples I think of are like Quail Man from Doug. Stuff. These sort of like cartoons and more sort of like,
it's like a cartoon within the cartoon.
Yeah. So let me ask you, this is the kind of thing I feel like that would be on one of our OK Cupid get to know you questions. Okay. What is the superpower that you would most want to have? Because we've just seen a range
of that
demonstrated by these sitcom stories.
I think I would like the superpower to teleport, or if not teleport, then fly, but really just get one from one place to another.
Yeah, teleportation is not really something that any of these sitcoms touch on. There's not, I guess, who can teleport? Comic book wise, Nightcrawler from the X-Men, he can kind of do that.
Okay.
But that's definitely not one of your standard moves. Flying would be my answer as well.
Right.
We touched on this a little bit when we were talking about, is it dreams or something? I dream about flying all the time.
Yeah,
I
think
have
so,
this recurring dream where I sort of jump really high, and like Luigi in Super Mario Brothers 2, I kind of like flutter down so slowly that it's
you can
almost
kind of direct
flying.
your own path.
And then eventually I start to just like push off on the air and like do these like double and triple jumps so that I eventually am just like pushing off on nothing and flying. And it is like...
What a joyful dream. Any analysts out there want to tell us what that's all about?
It is both exhilarating and terrifying. The scary part of it, and it's interesting that it's a dream that, you know, sort of formulated before modern technology and GPS and everything, because I think the anxiety that always comes up in those dreams is suddenly being very far away. Like, I'll be like, oh, cool. I'm like, oh, I'm over the city. And then, oh, I'm like over the ocean. And then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, I'm like thousands of miles across the ocean, or I'm like over Europe or something. And it's that fear of like, oh, I have no idea where I am. And I'm suddenly so far from home. And it turns into
like
that.
You have to keep flying so you can get back to a place that you know.
Yeah. Yeah, but so flying is something that I am sort of fascinated by. And as we'll see, it's one of the sort of go-to things that these sitcoms attempt to do.
Right.
So what's our lineup? What did we watch?
All right, we watched Gilligan's Island, Season 3, Episode 3, Pass the Vegetables, Please. We watched Bewitched, Season 6, Episode 20, Super Arthur. Dinosaurs, Season 4, Episode 2, Earl, Don't Be a Hero. And The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, Season 3, Episode 4, Super Twins.
Yeah, so we've talked about Gilligan's Island a few times now. If we just said that this is a trope that lends itself to the sillier sitcoms attempting it, it is no surprise that Gilligan throws his hat in the ring when doing this. So yeah, this is our first one, and I gotta say, I'm sure we probably talked about this in the past Gilligan segments we've done, and I know this is one where the production changed year to year. I was fascinated by whether or not they were on a real beach this whole time.
Yeah.
Like, it looks so real when they're out on this beach. That
when there's the water. Specifically, yeah.
And the lighting looks like real sunlight. And so, like, I did some cursory poking around.
Okay.
I did not get, like, a firm answer, but I'm inclined to say, yes, that this is shot on some sort of real beach in California or something. And then the other quote unquote outdoor shots that are a little more inland are a set with fake plants.
Yeah. And I would tend to agree with you. And specifically though, for one moment, there was one shot in particular where the danger radioactive seeds lid of the box is propped up, and the camera, it's still on the beach, so it's before they, make a stool out of it and whatever. And there's water behind it. It's like propped up against a rock. And the camera kind of zooms in on it, and then it does an unnatural freeze, like in video freeze, not like and that made me think, oh, it was unsteady.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't use the rest of that footage. And so they had to do an in-video freeze. Anyway, so I was like, oh, I think it may have been real.
But yeah, so you mentioned it already. There's going to be seeds that wash up on shore that are sort of going to be the catalyst for this whole story.
Yeah.
Real quick, this, they find radioactive seeds, but they don't realize they're radioactive because Gilligan isn't detail-oriented, right? He doesn't see the sign or whatever.
Yeah, the sign's covered in seaweed, and so he just takes the box lid off and throws it to the side and sees what's inside and doesn't look at the lid. And then we see the waves wash away the seaweed, and the big reveal is, oh, the seeds are radioactive, but only to the audience.
Yeah. And so the whole gang, they plant these seeds that they found, and they grow them. There's like
they grow in like 3 days.
Yeah, there's like stock footage of a sunrise, and then there's like a sped up footage of the plants growing. And so they've got these crops that have grown miraculously fast. And so they have this party with the whole cast, and the professor says, hey, everybody, I've got a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's everybody move our favorite
dish,
food
yeah.
closest to where we are.
I was like, when I watched it, I was like, wait, why is he saying that?
Such a weird thing. They've got this professor character. He's got to say something smart in every scene. So he'll announce, hey, everyone, sit near the food that you like the most.
Marianne's like, I want the carrots. Bring the carrots to me.
Yeah.
And Gilligan's like, spinach for me.
He calls dibs on the spinach. Yeah, so they have this feast with these...
And what is Mrs. What's-Her-Face gets the sugar beets.
Okay, yes, that makes sense. They have this feast, and then they get the radio broadcast, which I have to think was a pretty common plot device on Gilligan's Island.
This is how
radio.
They can pick up those radio signals from no more than like 5 miles away or something, right?
Yeah. So the radio broadcast is all about the radioactive seeds.
Yes.
It is just like, attention, everybody in the world. There are these radioactive seeds.
And they're all like, oh no!
Yeah,
while they're eating.
You'll know them because they're clearly labeled. Then it says... Now back to our program of cheery daytime tunes. And so they have to, they track down the box or something?
No, they say, Gilligan, what did it say on the top of the box? And he said, there wasn't a lid, there was just seaweed, and I moved it to the side. And then he was like, oh no, wait, I did find a lid on the beach. I made a stool out of it. And then he stands up and he picks up the stool, and the whole cast sees the danger radioactive seeds.
Yeah, okay. And so now we're going to get, I guess, is this the only one where we have multiple characters getting...
I mean, we had twins in the last episode.
That's true. That's true. And they do get different powers. Yeah. So, let's start right here, tracking the tropes of the different superpowers people get, because everybody ate this one food per person.
Right.
Everybody gets like the superpower that is stereotyped by that food.
Even if it's not scientifically accurate.
Exactly. And, I mean, look, this is the science of Gilligan's Island, right? We've established,
So
what
Marianne gets super eyesight because of the carotene in the carrots.
Yes. And so that is established by this whole crazy exchange where she spots she sees things that are very...
a ship, a rescue, like maybe a rescue boat. So she's trying to tell everybody to make a rescue signal, but nobody else can see the boat.
And she also sees the
and
professor's
describes
book.
it in detail.
Yeah, and she describes an equation that's on the professor's book. So the weird thing is, Marianne sees things that are far away and doesn't realize that they're far away.
Right.
Like she'll just be like, oh, that book over there,
Can't you see it? It's just right there.
Yeah, and everyone will be like, no, that's inside a window 3 miles down the street. She's like, huh, that's weird. But so, she tells them that there's a boat, and she says like, oh, yes, I can describe, let's see, it's a man in a scarf, blah, 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 and a woman in a bikini. And the skipper gets all horny for the women in the bikinis.
Like, I wish I could see them.
Yes, that are being described to him by Marianne. And so they're like, okay, cool, I guess we should make a signal if she's right, if there really is a flare down there. And then Gilligan shows up, and this was the same level of sitcom communication as Charles explaining to Sarah, I'm Amy, just saying again and again, I'm Amy, and leaving her to understand that. The skipper is going like, oh, we need to make a signal for the boat. And Gilligan's like, but what do you mean? I don't see a boat. And he's like, oh, well, of course you don't see the boat. Like, it's just one of those things where he refuses to provide the piece of information that makes it make sense.
Marianne can see the boat, but none of us can see the boat. But Marianne's not here right now. Why would she be here? Like all of this
we
around
just
and around.
get this weird who's on first-esque thing with like none of the effort that went into making who's on first kind of make its own weird kind of sense.
Just very bland.
Yeah. So, okay. Supervision, super eyesight, right?
Yes.
That's our first power.
And then Gilligan's told to go gather wood to make the signal fire.
Yeah.
And he goes over and he goes to like break off a branch from a larger tree, and he picks it up, and he picks up the whole dead tree. The whole thing with one hand, and he just kind of looks at it and he's like, oh my gosh, and puts it back down because he has eaten spinach, which gives him Popeye strength.
Yes, as we have learned from many a Popeye cartoon, spinach gives you strength. Yeah, so simple enough, super strength, and his whole thing is he breaks everything all the time, and Mrs. Howell has super speed because
she's super hyperactive from all the sugar in her sugar beets.
Okay, so the sight gags that they're doing for Gilligan and Mrs. Howell was really taking me back to my English class high school video days. Just the thing, having him bench press the skipper by pulling him up
hammock,
with cables.
Right, in his hammock, one hand at a time.
Yeah,
one hand at a time.
Having the, Mrs. Howell lady running around the bedroom with just the simple speeding up the footage and stuff. Just all these simple, low-tech, the camera tricks, basically, that you could do in your backyard. That is, that's the fun, I feel like, of a sitcom attempting this kind of story. And so, Gilligan is going to be the one that revels in that. And then what does Mr. Howell, does he get a superpower?
No, and that's the thing. I can't remember the other people's vegetables because I can't remember their superpowers. I don't know if any of the rest of them got superpowers.
Yeah, I just wrote eyesight, strength, and speed.
That's all I remember too.
Yeah, there might have been a quick one. Maybe you got to think that Ginger.
She was the one that during that whole thing never had anything in front of her.
It's true. Ginger
but
doesn't have
the
much.
skipper said he liked string beans.
Yeah,
but nothing came of it.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, so we don't have enough time, I guess, to really showcase everybody's powers. What we get is the professor's plan.
Right.
This was pretty much like what Trump told us to do about COVID, right? Didn't he say at some point, like, drink soap and put bleach in your food or something?
It was eat soap. So the way that they needed to undo, the something carbons in their belly was to eat, this bicarbonate, which is like Tums, right? And so they were going to eat the soap that they had been making, and they all ate an amount of soap, and they were all burping bubbles, and it was like a little bubble party. And it was funny that camera trick that you had there was just like they would take these really weird sort of side shots, profile shots of the characters in very stiff positions, and then they'd kind of open their mouths and the bubbles would come out.
It's like the vomit guns on SNL. Yeah,
yes,
it's just like when you do fake projectile vomiting. Yeah. I mean, look, this episode is, if you like those silly little cheap camera tricks and stuff, this is the one for it. And that is the end of this episode, this bubble party. This is a very straightforward...
Well, there was a little tag with Gilligan, who had been the one who said that he thought the soap tasted good. Everybody else just sort of munched through to get as much as they needed until they were bubbling, and then they stopped. Well, he kept eating, so he had this massive bubble that ended up blowing through the wall.
Yeah, but so what's interesting to me about this is that this doesn't really seem to be pulling from like comic books heroes like Superman and stuff.
Right.
This isn't really like superpowers as like an adventure. It's like superpowers as a condition. It's almost more like Carrie or something, where it's like...
Or like if we had a trope that was, radiation poisoning or whatever, and we found other ones that had the same kind of...
Yeah, but it is this thing of like, oh, now we're like freaks because we have these powers and we need to... I don't even really understand with some of them what the motivation is. Why would it be bad for Marianne to have
be able to see
really good
far,
vision?
And bad for
the woman to be really fast.
Oh, because, what's his name? The professor was reading in his book and he said it might kill us.
Right. This is
and then they were all laying down and they were all just like, oh, we're all about to die because there's no cure.
This is like Chernobyl on HBO. Yes. These characters just waiting to waste away.
And then the professor says, oh my goodness, it's the last thing we should be doing is laying around. We have to get up and move and run. And so then everybody was running around being crazy. And then he discovered that it was the bicarbonate.
Yeah. So I just wanted to flag that because I feel like that's something that these first two shows are going to have in common.
Yeah.
And then it's going to kind of flip when we get to the 90s and it
right.
focuses
And it's
more...
like all about what are the superhero rules and following this rule book. And each of them mentions it. That like superheroes have to this and this and this.
And the whole notion of, having a cape and stuff is all... These first two aren't about that. They're more about like being cursed with the superpowers.
Yeah.
So on that note, let's move on to Bewitched.
Season 6, episode 20, Super Arthur!
Yeah, so I think we may have only talked about Bewitched once, way back on our Doppelgangers episode, where they had a baby that time. So that was original Daryl, right? I feel like we have to address first and foremost, this is, I think, my first experience with the second Daryl.
New Daryl, okay.
Bewitched. And I gotta say, I found him a very harsh presence. Like this, I felt like that first guy, he reminds me of Wilbur from Mr. Ed. He's just got a very sort of like amiable, goofy look to him. And this guy reminded me of like Robert Patrick from The Terminator.
Wow, okay.
Or like Chris Cooper or something.
He was definitely vexed throughout this episode.
Yeah, but there's different ways to be vexed. Like this guy has like a pointy, craggly kind of way about him, these beady little eyes and this triangular head. Like I found this such a strange casting. Like he did not, like the actor is fine and the characterization in general is fine, but it just like, this guy does not have a lovable vibe to me. He seems like the person that you would cast to be like the TA that's always on your case or something, like he seems like somebody you would cast to be kind of a heavy. Like he doesn't seem, it's just surprising to me that he would be in this role as the sort of put upon lovable husband.
Yeah. I'm that all surprises me. I don't know. I guess I just didn't see him as being so. I mean, but I've probably watched more of these episodes than you have. So it's like in my brain, those two guys, their faces meld together. Like I can't really distinguish in my head one from the other.
Interesting.
So I'm just like, I don't really know what you mean.
I think one of them has a round head and one of them has a pointy head. But this one is going to focus on Uncle Arthur, who is Paul Lynde, who I know mostly as the dad from Bye Bye Birdie. Right. But he shows up in lots of things.
What don't do what these kids do.
Yes. Very distinctive, recognizable
and
character.
And from Hollywood
actor.
Squares.
Okay, sure.
He was off in a square.
Interesting. And so, I feel like he was not around for the other one that we watched. But he is a big part of this.
Yeah, he's Uncle Arthur, and he is a recurring character on Bewitched. And the other one we watched, though, had her cousin.
Yes, it had another older lady.
Tabitha or something like that, or maybe Tabitha was the daughter. But who she was playing was her cousin, like her doppelganger was her cousin that had come in for the birth. Uh-huh. But so I mean, we've got a cousin and an uncle now. We've also met her mother in other episodes, so they definitely get a lot of mileage out of bringing other witches in to create shenanigans.
Yes, the magical family. And this one is going to be really fond of the camera trick of just stopping the camera and moving things and stuff, just having things pop on and off. They always are doing that.
And that's because, so the deal with this one is that Uncle Arthur has come for a visit, but Samantha kind of recognizes immediately that his magic is on the fritz and he doesn't want to believe it. So she's trying to convince him to call the doctor. Dr.
Bombay.
Yeah. And he doesn't, and he keeps breaking mirrors, right?
He starts in a mirror and then he comes out of it.
And then he can't fix it.
Yeah. He tries to like dump water on
Daryl
and dumps it on himself.
Yes,
with his,
that's
yeah,
right.
It is,
Yeah.
Again, it's something out of Harry Potter. Like, my spells aren't working. Everything's going wrong.
Yeah, it's Wingardium Leviosa. Yeah. So his magic's on the fritz. He doesn't want to admit it. And then he finally says, okay, call the doctor. And Dr. Bombay shows up.
He's an old-timey, like, Mr. Monopoly man doctor with fancy clothes.
That top hat, yeah.
Yes.
And he, I guess, at first is like, nothing's wrong with you, and then something happens, and he's like, oh, something is wrong with you. Here, take one of these experimental pills.
Yeah, they deduce that Uncle Arthur, he was riding in the winged horse derby, and he was exposed to some sort of virus in the winged horse feathers.
Yeah.
So again, this is the kind of thing you got to think. Same thing with Sabrina and stuff. They're just constantly like, just making
come
things
up with magical random situations.
Right, that you don't ever get to see. They just like refer to, I was at the ogre's jubilee. And so that's the impetus to give him this like experimental treatment or whatever. And this is another one where he's going to be sort of cursed with the power of just kind of like manifesting his own imagination.
Right. Anytime he says, I think I'm blah, 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 or I feel like blah, 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 then he is that thing.
Yes. His power is simile.
Right.
He goes,
He immediately becomes, he's like Descartes.
Because he thinks, therefore he is?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. And so what are some examples? He turns into the devil at one point because he says like, it hurts like the devil.
He turns into a plant.
Yes.
A big palm tree.
Well, he doesn't turn into one. He just kind of produces one, right?
Oh, okay.
The plant is going to become a big thing because then there's this other character that I guess is Daryl's boss.
Right.
This is Larry, I think. And so this is, again, standard sitcom thing. He shows up. We got to keep it a secret. He's asking questions. We got to shuffle all around because he can't know about the magic. And he keeps Arthur makes jokes about, like, I read palms because there's a palm tree.
Because there's a palm tree there in the living room. And then... But he turns into Superman at one point.
Well, yeah, that's like sort of the final stage of it. Yeah, I'm just looking through.
He turns into a couple different things. He says he feels like something about Native Americans. Like he says like an Indian chief or something. And then he is immediately in full dress.
Dr. Bombay does explain that the odds of success are 3 out of 4, and the other ones are fatalities. So that is,
wow.
That is something. But Darren delivers this ultimatum to Samantha, and this is part of why I guess he comes across so harsh to me. He says I'm going to leave the house and check into a hotel if you don't
that's right. He does
get your act together.
He does threaten to leave her. That is a big deal.
And
I forgot about that.
Yeah, you gotta think a palm tree in the living room can't really be the craziest thing that's happened with this witch wife.
No, but he's under a lot of pressure because he's trying to get this account, and it won't happen if he can't work.
Yes,
and
that's why Larry
interrupted.
is buzzing around the house all the time because he wants to know what is your idea for the pitch, and then everything is going to kind of come together when they go out for a ride. Right, there's a point where Samantha says to Uncle Arthur, "Let me take you for a ride." He says something like, "Oh, can we fit on your broomstick?" And she's like, "No, I mean a ride in the car."
Right.
And then that's when he says I feel like Superman or something.
Yeah.
And he becomes Super Arthur.
Oh, okay.
And so I guess this is almost like the bridge between the Gilligan thing and the later ones because we do get very much the iconography of Superman.
The cape, with the blue suit and the red lettering and everything.
Yeah. We also get him, we should say, this is a lineup, I think, where all 4 of our shows are fake audiences. There are no true...
It's all canned laughter.
Yeah. There are no true multi-camera shows in any of these. I think Dinosaurs is filmed multi-camera, but not in front of an audience because it was so complicated.
Right.
And so this one really is just all over the place. And so this whole Superman scene is out in some neighborhood in LA. And they've got these hilarious shots, kind of like the Saved by the Bell skydiving thing, where some poor schmo is being suspended by like a helicopter or something. It's definitely not Paul Lynde.
Yeah.
It's some guy who, he doesn't even look like he's flying. He's just sort of like standing and floating around like this, just the roofs of this suburban neighborhood. And then he lands and they have Paul Lynde on the roof of the house. I don't know if it's their house or whatever. The police officers come and then the boss Larry comes. And everyone's like,
I'm Super Arthur.
Yeah, he's saying, I'm Super Arthur. Everyone's like, what's going on here? And, again, like probably happens in every Bewitched episode, Samantha starts talking fast. Oh, this is all just a trick. It's a stunt. He's got a rocket pack up behind his back or whatever. And so when they're like, but why did you do this? Like the police and the guy, their friends are like, what is this? Why are you doing this? And Daryl is like, this is my pitch for the account. Right?
Oh my goodness.
It's something about, what does he say? It's the Top Pop account. It's tasty, man. It's groovy, man. It's Superman. And that's his slogan, and this whole thing.
And everyone's like, this is an amazing pitch.
This was the first ever viral marketing that, before it's even approved in-house in the advertising agency, they have a guy flying around on rooftops in order to make the pitch.
How much money did they spend on this pitch, right?
Yeah. But so that is their cover story, that in order to impress upon Larry what Darren's idea was, they had their uncle fly around like Superman and land on the roof of a building and do this whole thing.
And with the hidden rocket pack, it was just a trick.
And so now everyone understands his idea, and they can go into the Top Pop executives and pitch this Superman thing.
So everybody's happy now.
It ends with the tag of the doctor giving them another pill for the side effects, the transformation.
Yeah, exactly, because Uncle Arthur calls him back and they go to beat him up because they're so mad at him, and then he gives them the antidote or whatever. Yeah,
there's a little political humor there where he says, I wish I voted for Medicare. I don't know, did Darren say that? I don't even remember. I jotted that down.
He did say that, yes, at the very end.
Yeah, there you go. And so, look, it's another one where they get in on that Superman iconography at the end.
Yeah.
But this is presented literally as a disease, as Bombay's syndrome.
Right. It's his problem that, he has with his magic, and everything's on the fritz.
Yeah, which is like, I don't know, superpowers when you're already a magical person
is a little bit strange, but also it's kind of funny to see, like, what would it be like if someone's magic was out of control? Yeah,
and specifically if they could not ever make comparisons without turning themselves into something. Yeah. All right. So I think as we move on to the 90s ones, they're going to dig more into the sort of comic book superheroes that we know and love. Let's move on to Dinosaurs.
Season 4, Episode 2, Earl, Don't Be a Hero.
Yeah, so Dinosaurs we've talked about, I think, just once on our Puppets episode. I've said it before, I'll say it again. These things that want to be about animals, but then don't. And the animals just walk around wearing clothing and working at the car wash and stuff. Vex me. And so this is an example of that, where right off the bat, we get into this story because they're sitting around watching TV. And it's just like, if dinosaurs watch TV, then what are we even doing?
Didn't we explain this in the last time we watched Dinosaurs?
That it's like an alternate world where they evolved. Okay, now it's starting to come back to me.
And did you see how he saved the planet? He pushed the meteor away.
Well, he also turned back time the way Superman does in one of those movies. But okay, so you're saying in this episode he averted the meteor that killed the dinosaurs?
Maybe.
Interesting. But didn't you also say last time that they all died in the final episode?
Yes, I think so.
All right, so I guess it was a different meteor. Okay, yeah, I guess I did kind of forget that part of the premise, but still, it annoys me when it just seems like a gimmick for the visuals and the way the story plays out and the way the humor is set up even doesn't seem to really have anything to do with them being dinosaurs. But
it's all in the family, but we're dinosaurs. In fact, Sally Struthers is the daughter's voice.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just going to put that out there. We'll see, and then maybe at the end we'll take stock of like, did them being dinosaurs like play into this at all? This is very much in the middle of the 90s because it starts with the little baby character is watching the commercial for the toys, and it's like, if your mommy loves you, or rather, I guess he's watching the TV show with the superhero character, and it's like, if your mommy loves you, she'll buy you the action figure. And I feel like that was a big cultural joke at this time. Like the jig was up with the Saturday morning cartoons trying to sell you the toys and the cereals and everything. Yes. And that was a big target of satire, I think.
And so the baby is totally sold though, and says, "Mama, do you love me?" And Jessica Walters, who plays the voice of the mom, says, "Why, yes, but my love won't be counted by, whether or not I buy you that toy. In fact, I think I love you more by not buying you that toy so that you can continue to grow your imagination." And then the older boy was like, "Good sidestep, Mom."
Yeah. So the superhero that this baby likes from TV is Captain Action.
Yeah,
right?
It was like Action Man or
this
something.
This is a subtrope that drives me crazy, that a lot of times when there is a superhero within this fake world of a sitcom or a movie or something, you can just feel the disdain that these writers have, or at least the total lack of interest that they have. Like, it's always Turbo Man, Action Man, like it's always
they can't license real ones, probably.
I know, but like we mentioned Quail Man at the beginning. That's a good example, I think, of like there's somebody that took at least 10 seconds to come up with a funny alternate of like the kind of thing that might be a superhero.
Yeah, but it's also, I think Doug in that writes Quail Man. It's like a dream.
It's his sort of alter ego,
exactly.
like Red Baron type thing. But I'm just saying they put a little more thought into it. It always annoys me that the comic book character in so many of these things is like literally Action or Turbo and Captain or Man.
And
like,
Super.
Some combination of those, or Ultra. Some combination of those like 5 words is always the thing.
What I'm hearing so far from you is that this was definitely your favorite show, because in the first 2 minutes you already have the premise is annoying and the first thing that happens in the show is annoying.
There is a lot about this that doesn't totally work for me. Now, look, I mean, of course, the whole time we're marveling at the, I don't know if craftsmanship is the word, just how cool and impressive this whole thing is. This is one of the final major projects that Jim Henson was involved in. I think he died when this was still being sort of formulated.
It says executive producer Brian Henson, so I'm assuming that's one of his kids.
Yeah, this was around the time, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies at the start of the 90s too, where the Henson stuff was really getting into the creature stuff
Right.
and away from the Muppets.
Well, and having watched Dark Crystal and some of these other things that have the creatures, I was kind of, we probably said this the first time we watched it, I was kind of disappointed at the lack of facial movement in these characters. Like even in the Fraggles, what are the big monsters called?
The Gorgs.
The Gorgs. Like they, or at least two of the Gorgs, had a lot more facial animatronic kind of puppetry things that they could control, because it takes two people to operate. It's the person inside that does the big movements, and then there's a person on the remote control that does the facial expressions. And then obviously a third person is the voice. It's not usually any of the puppeteers in this show that are the voices. They've got lots of kind of famous and semi-famous people. Like I couldn't recognize the boss's voice. It's Sherman Helmsley from the Jeffersons.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, that's
and I was like, oh, that's why the voice was landing in them.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Jessica Walter is the mom from Arrested Development and many other things. And then, of course, Sally Struthers is Charlene, who's the older sister. And I think the guy who's doing Baby Sinclair is Elmo. That's Kevin Clash.
Kevin Clash.
Yeah.
Okay. Very controversial, noted sex criminal Kevin Clash. All right. So, as far as your original point about the sort of articulation and expressiveness about the dinosaurs, that is a problem with this. Like, they look funny and fun, but...
And the baby has good expressions.
Yeah, but it is this thing of like... God, we were just around the corner from CGI, and everybody complained about how horrible CGI is and how weightless and fake, and we need to go back to the old school puppets and the old school practical effects. And I generally agree with that sentiment, but I do think before we go romanticizing the old school stuff too much, you do see that it is a little bit of a pick your poison type thing.
And they do some really bad old CGI in this too.
There's bad compositing, and this is, they're like I said, they're creatures as opposed to Muppets, which means they're going for a sort of realism, and because they're dinosaurs, they're reptiles, they have this like hard surfacing that just they end up being not as lovable and, like you're saying, not as movable as the traditional Fraggles and Muppets.
And you can
Sesame
tell
Street.
the ones that they spent the time on, right? Like Earl and the baby, who are kind of our main characters for most of the episodes, they spent the time on giving them movable eyebrows.
Yeah, and the boss, I think, is very expressive.
Exactly. But the boss is just like half of a...
Oh, yeah. He is like Jabba the Hutt.
He's always sitting. For them.
Yeah.
I mean, at least when we see, I think in this episode, he's always sitting. I don't know if maybe in other episodes. But so he's basically just a face.
Yeah.
And so...
But what a face, because he's the Triceratops. And so he's just, he's a fun design, I think. And he's built in a way that he sort of like lunges forward and his face kind of like enlarges when he gets angry.
And he's always angry.
Yeah.
So in this episode, we have Earl is bummed out. He gets home from work and he wants to play with the baby and talk to the baby, but he's standing in front of the TV and the baby is mad because daddy is blocking, or not the mama, as he would say, is blocking his favorite TV show.
Tale as old as time. Kid does not admire the dad.
Yes. And so he's pretty bummed out about it. Earl, the dad's pretty bummed out about that. And he, is kind of talking to himself about how can I impress the baby? Oh, maybe I'll make this super cool helmet because I got this new promotion. Oh, I can show the baby my new lab coat because I got this new promotion. No, it doesn't come with any money, but it comes with this title and this lab coat. So maybe the baby will think I'm cool because of this. And his best friend is trying to talk him into saying, that's probably, you shouldn't worry about what the baby thinks.
Yeah.
It's like impressing your kid with a hat isn't going to be the thing that actually impresses your kid. And then he goes, but what do I know? I don't have any kids. And so at this point, Earl has thrown the hat into the toxic waste.
Yeah. We need to back up a little bit because I don't remember all of the lore here about Earl Sinclair's vocation, right?
So he's
I'm
a
on the
tree
record
pusher.
as saying dinosaurs shouldn't have jobs.
Right.
So this promotion that he's talking about, that he wears a lab coat to work, seems to be toxic waste disposal.
Yes. So he's a tree pusher. That's his original
the guys
job.
that stand in Washington Square Park and try to sell you weed. They go,
No,
trees.
he's like a lumberjack. He pushes over trees. That's why he wears the flannel, brawny kind of shirt, with the red and black check.
Okay, that's a real job that people have, or is that a thing
lumberjack?
that dinosaurs?
Yes.
Okay, I've never heard tree pusher.
Tree pusher, because he doesn't have to saw it like a lumberjack. He's a big dinosaur.
Okay.
He just pushes them over.
All right, so I'm trying to grasp for something that reflects the fact that he is a dinosaur. He is a Tyrannosaurus Rex and not a person.
Oh, is he a Tyrannosaurus Rex?
I think so, or an Allosaur, some sort of big.
Because his friend has the little tiny arms and the big head.
I assumed he was a T-Rex, but certainly some sort of big carnivore, right?
Yeah. So he's a tree pusher, which is like the dinosaur equivalent of a lumberjack or a logging man.
Okay. And now he's a toxic waste disposer,
right?
Which is the dinosaur equivalent of a toxic waste disposer.
I guess, yes. So he is now responsible for dumping all of these barrels of toxic waste into the Silent Springs.
Now let's just clock another, 90s mentality up the wazoo here. Toxic waste, just that in and of itself, right, is a big 90s talking point.
And the fact that that companies are secretly disposing of it into local springs.
And the name of his company is We Say So Corporation.
Yes.
This is we're getting into that era that we always talk about of hey man, my local coffee shop went under because Starbucks opened down the road and Walmart is ruining everything. And so, this was before you had digital taking down everything. You had these big corporations were public enemy number one. So again, big targets for satire in the 90s. And we're getting all of that in this set.
Yes. So he's sitting there. He and Earl are dumping the waste. They're having their lunch. He listens, or not Earl, his friend. It's Earl and his friend. And so he listens to his friend's advice. He tosses the hat it's like a hard hat with a flashy red light on top. He tosses it into the toxic waste. Then his buddy is like, oh, but what do I know? I don't have kids. And he's like, oh no. And so Earl dives into the springs that is covered in toxic waste that he's been dumping in to retrieve the hat. And he comes out and he's glowing.
Yeah, he's glowing. There's a little back and forth where the friend says, what if the toxic waste gave you a vast arsenal of superpowers, right? I thought
and his friend is the one that now is going to establish this trope that we can track across the next 2 episodes, which is that when you have some sort of event that might potentially give you superpowers, there's a playbook, like a rule book that you have to follow. So number 1, you have to test out and see what those powers are.
Yeah.
Try flying, try X-ray vision,
so
try
this is going to be
super strength.
Yeah. So in terms of tracking the powers, this is like the Superman model, right? We started with Gilligan where everybody got a different power based on their vegetable. And then we had Bewitched, which was like the power of imagination. So sort of one guy having kind of one power, but then he became
a complication
Superman.
From a medicine, a witch medicine, yeah.
But now we've got this straight up Superman type thing where he's just like, oh, I just sort of have this standard array of powers, which includes first and foremost flying and heat vision, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the ones we really sort of get a taste of right away.
Then the friend also says you have to, number 2 in the rule book is once you've discovered you have powers, you have to use them for good. And number 3, you can never let anyone know your secret identity.
Yeah. So he decides to become Captain Impressive.
Yes.
Because that's all he wants to do is be impressive to the baby.
Right.
So he's not going to reveal even to his family who he is. He's just going to go on a good deed spree.
Right.
And so we get even I'm going to use the word montage, but I feel like that's being generous. Like, this is just...
two things.
Yeah, like, it just, all of a sudden, we get a news reporter.
Right.
You know, because again, dinosaurs have absolutely everything that people have, exactly the same. So, it's a TV news reporter, Dinosaur, who's saying... Captain Impressive has saved many lives, right? That's one of the things he mentioned. And yeah, he's just like, there is a superhero now. He's this guy.
He pushed the meteor away, and they had like some, video out in space of him pushing a meteor away.
Yeah.
And he stopped multiple bank robberies and apprehended the bank robbers.
Yeah. Now I'll say, amongst my many criticisms, what I do think this has going for it is the sight of Earl, the big giant dinosaur, in this superhero outfit.
Right, in a mask and a cape, and nobody recognizes him.
Yeah, it's just...
And the cape is made out of the same flannel as his t-shirt, as his flannel shirt.
Yeah, it's intrinsically just a funny sight because he's so gigantic and he has this little blindfold on. And then, it's just taking that Superman Clark Kent thing to the next level because he is just truly the most like gigantic distinctive person in the world, or dinosaur, I guess.
Right.
And so I liked that. Like, it was funny when they showed him flying around and doing things. Now like we said, he can fly, he's got heat vision, and I feel like that's another little subtrope, is like the sort of casual fun uses of your powers, like zapping the coffee and stuff. And so the next big turn is that when his boss sees him zapping the coffee, I think.
He was his friend, who's the only one who knows, was hanging out with him again. They were having a lunch break, and he goes, "Hey, will you grill this grilled cheese for me? Will you heat up this grilled cheese for me?"
Yeah. So again, very 90s storyline.
But before we get to there, though, he comes home late for dinner, and his wife's like, "Where have you been?" And the baby is now doesn't give a crap about Captain Action, is obsessed with Captain Impressive.
Yeah, Captain Impressive is the toast of the town. The baby is all in, but Earl is respecting the code of the superhero.
Yeah, he keeps almost slipping and then being like, "Oh, because it's impressive that I go to work every day."
Yeah, which is strange because he has said straight up, like, the only reason I'm doing this is to impress the baby.
But he's got to stick to the rule book.
It is a lot of restraint. So at work, his boss gets wind of the superpowers.
Yeah, he sees him.
Yeah, he sees him doing the grilled cheese thing, and he says, your contract with We Say So Corporation has a superpower clause, basically. Right. It's like Article 7, Sector B, blah, blah, blah. We own the rights to all proceeds and revenues from
We own the rights to
powers.
your superpowers. Yeah, we can make you use them for anything we deem appropriate. So you aren't going to be doing good deeds anymore. You're going to be selling these action figures that are actually like lawn dart stabby tools. Yeah. You're going to be trying to convince parents to buy these, foods that aren't vegetables for their kids, like really unhealthy food or something.
Yeah. And he says, we're going to make the captive impressive action fun hour, because
right. They're going to do the TV show.
Yeah, this is a world kind of like in I Love Lucy, the Superman and that thing, where like superheroes all have their own TV shows that star the actual superhero. And so, Earl sort of reluctantly agrees to all this. It never seems to occur to him to like use his superpowers to just liberate himself.
Yeah, he is completely beholden to his boss because he has to work. And that's his whole thing. Like, he's like Al Bundy. He's so put upon in this thankless job that pays no money because he has to scrape together these pennies for his family.
Yeah.
And superheroing doesn't pay.
Well, I guess that's true, but it could, in just all the usual ways that people could use superpowers to benefit themselves.
Right, but then that's not being good.
No, I know, but I guess I guess what I'm saying is just
Like,
that...
Batman's independently wealthy.
No, that's true.
Superman and Spider-Man have their weird little families.
I still feel like I would reevaluate my loyalty to this job if I had these superpowers.
But I also feel like that's why you don't work at a 7-Eleven now. You know what I mean? Like, you're not just trying to scrape together 2 pennies so your family can eat.
So yeah, Earl does not realize he has any leverage in this situation and just goes along with everything the boss tells him to do.
And he's bullied into it, right? Like, the boss character is aggressively angry and mean and manipulative.
Yeah, and then so it ends up with him, they have like a home shopping network show for dinosaurs.
Right. We watched this with my parents and they were cracking up because my dad worked at home shopping for a big chunk of his career.
Yeah, they have the Dino Shopping Network. He goes on and his co-host Dino like doesn't like him. He's got this contempt for him, like he doesn't take him seriously. He thinks he's like a sellout, I guess. And so it's just like, it's like the worm has turned and like Earl is just kind of making a fool of himself now.
Yeah, he's using his heat vision to do ribbon cuttings. And then at the ribbon cutting, the press is there and they're like, hey, Captain Impressive, are you sure you should be here doing all these ribbon cuttings when 7 bank robberies have taken place just today? And he's like, what's a steal? These prices at the We Say So Supermart that I'm opening right now. Okay, bye-bye. And then he flies away.
Yeah, exactly. He's been totally morally co-opted and corrupted.
Yep.
He's sold
and he's
out.
Miserable. He's upset about it.
Yeah. And so the thing that really kind of makes him take a step back and reevaluate his decisions is when the baby calls in to the home shopping network thing and is like, I want the toy.
Right. Because the toy has this like dagger inside of it. It's super unsafe.
Yeah.
And he's like, you shouldn't do that, baby. And then he reveals, he starts to explain everything and he starts to reveal who he is.
Yeah.
And
he breaks down on the air a la Network or
right.
something.
And tries to, is like, hey, kids, this shouldn't be what you idolize. You should idolize your fathers who work really hard and do a backbreaking job and whatever. And then it cuts to, and then he goes to reveal himself or something. And then it cuts to the test screen. And when it comes back on, the host is now wearing the, 5 sizes too large superhero costume and is like, I'm Captain Impressive.
Yeah. And so we get, at least with this one, like a very clear lesson learning or moralize. And we get him saying mommies and daddies are the real heroes, even though they're not flashy. And that is very much, the thing that this is trying to embrace. So, I feel like that's at least something to cling to as okay, like that kind of ties this story together.
And then he goes home and he has a heart-to-heart with the baby and he brings the baby the stabby Captain Impressive toy, but he's taken out the dagger, so it's just a doll that comes apart in 2 pieces. And he, is telling the baby why he works so hard for his family, and if the baby's still impressed with him and whatever. And the baby's like, not really, but then starts taking off the cape and mask and playing with the doll of his dad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the final sort of moment, is the baby just playing with, the unadorned dad doll. And that's nice. How did Earl lose his powers? That happened so
that was
fast.
The other thing. So rule number 4 was you can never shower because you'll wash off the toxic waste. Okay. And he is talking to his friend like, Fran's telling me I'm pretty ripe. I should probably, need to maybe see if I can take a shower. And his friend's like, you can't do that. It'll wash off, that sticky, toxic goo that's stuck to you is what's giving you the superpower. So you can't take a bath and you can't take a shower. So he goes and he takes a shower and now his superhero powers are over.
All right, that explains it. Because, yeah, that happens so fast that just the last couple scenes, they're just like, yeah, the superpowers were fun, but now they're gone. And, yeah, it ends with that moment. The baby's playing with the toy. He's saying the dad's catchphrases. He's going like, I hate my job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is. It's a nice moment. And, yeah, you know, again, very 90s, very much pulling not just the superhero stuff, but all of this corporations and the advertising on TV and everything. And, yeah, now we're going to go into the 21st century with The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Season 3, Episode 4, Super Twins.
Yeah, so I have not had the pleasure of meeting the twins, of entering the suite, experiencing the sweet life. This was all new to me.
Same.
My only exposure to one of these two, these Sprouse kids, is in these movies, The Beautiful Disaster and The Beautiful Wedding and stuff. They're like these sort of like hot, sexy...
this is when they were older.
Yeah. This is when they're grown-up pretty boys.
Yeah, when they were younger, before they got this show, they were in Big Daddy, the Adam Sandler movie.
But yeah, I had never seen this. I know that it went on. There was like a second version, right, where they were on like a cruise ship or something.
Yeah, Sweet Life on Deck.
I'll say this. When when half or more of our lineup consists of going to Disney Plus for the sitcom, catalog, I feel like we're in for trouble. And yeah, this.
So hold on though. You're saying that this show didn't do it for you.
Well, let's just start at the beginning. It sort of announces the kind of tone that it's going to be. The very first scene, the cold open, is they're outside of this hotel that I guess they live at. That's their sweet life. They're playing video games.
Because their mom works there, and that was like part of her deal or whatever.
Okay, so the guy comes out, the bellboy or whatever, and yells at them and confiscates their bikes.
Yeah, he is like the maitre d'. He's like the main guy, like the hotel manager, main guy downstairs, not the bellboy.
So in the course of the next like 10 seconds, one of the twins goes, when you're a kid, you have no power. And then they see a shooting star and they go, let's make a wish. And so they both in unison say, I wish we had superpowers. And then they fart or something. There's like some kind of fart joke.
One kid farts. They made an extraordinarily high amount of the one twin, and I don't know the difference between the two of them, but the one twin at this point, they were like just kind of creeping into puberty, and the one is a little bit chunkier than the other. Yeah. And they made so many fat jokes about him always wanting to eat, about him always being hungry, about, oh, isn't that delicious? Let's go get that.
And so he farts a lot because he eats a lot.
Exactly. And so he was the one that farted as well. Like anytime there was a joke to be made about food, he was the butt of that joke.
That's unfortunate, especially because this kid does not, he's no, potato or whatever the kid was from.
He was just a little bit. He's just
Spud.
but he's just a little bit chunkier than his.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm saying that right off the bat, we're in the same territory as the Boy Meets World episode where the microwave oven sends them back in time to the 50s.
Okay, I gotta stop you right now.
Okay,
because that to me was very clearly just sort of like a dream or like a silly little moment to set up a parody that they did throughout the rest of the episode that to me puts this I'm watching more of this show. This show's on par with iCarly.
All right, great. What I'll say is at the beginning, yes, I'll grant you that it is clearly a dream and it's intentionally silly and weird, but nonetheless, it definitely told me like, okay, we are looking at best, a Hannah Montana type tone and vibe. But this is going to be a little loud and silly.
Hannah Montana, when we've gone back and watched them, they're not good. Like, it doesn't feel watchable. Oh, by the way, the Hannah Montana episode that we watched, the bully that was in that, also plays like a goth bully in this, which was hilarious. I was like, okay, we have the same cast of characters. Also featured in this show, the child molester who was the one who molested Drake Bell from that Nickelodeon documentary.
Yeah.
He's the voice of the mirror that Brenda Song talks to.
Okay, the second
London
child
Tipton.
molester we've referenced in the last 15 minutes.
And so, if you're dealing with children's television, there's gonna be child molesters involved.
Unfortunately. Well, okay, let's switch gears here. What I was pleasantly surprised, or whom I was pleasantly surprised to see, were Ashley Tisdale and Brenda Song. Right? I don't think I knew. I consider them both, sort of Disney, Nickelodeon type people. It doesn't surprise
that
me.
Ashley Tisdale started on this show until she popped up in the credits. And I was like, oh, that's the High School Musical girl. I forgot she did this.
I will say I am a huge fan of the High School Musical trilogy, especially parts 1 and 3. That was a weird, guilty pleasure that my brother and I just got into watching that DVD. I was never the target age for it, but for one reason or another, I thought it was really fun. I think that those movies are a blast. And I think that Ashley Tisdale is great as her role. Brenda Song sort of quietly shows up in great things all the time. She's a New Girl, of course. She's in The Social Network. She's just kind of like here and there pops up in really good stuff.
Yeah.
And so what I see right off the bat and what's going to kind of carry through in this episode, I obviously have no idea how much this is true of the rest of the show. It doesn't really lean on these kids that much. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, just like in iCarly. It's this like crazy madcap building that they're in. And so there's lots of things happening, lots of ways to keep it moving. There's the, wacky enemy doorman character, like Lubert is his name, right? In iCarly. In this, it's Mr. Mosby. And he kind of reminds me of like an angry LeVar Burton.
Yeah.
He's like really mad at them. So, but what it turns into after this wish, right, is to me kind of a modern remake of any old 1960s Batman.
Okay.
Like the show, The Adventures of Batman or whatever it was called.
Yes, the Adam West show.
Yes, exactly. That's what this was doing. And it was like, even down to the way, like, he would move his arms to the side. So when they make this wish, they wake up the next morning and they realize that they both have superpowers. One can hear what people are thinking.
Yes, telepathy.
Yep. And he also has telekinesis. He can, like, move things with his mind.
Yes.
And then the other one has super speed.
So again, we're getting superpowers. Well, I guess it was you that brought up teleportation, and I mentioned Nightcrawler, because I was going to say Professor Xavier from the X-Men is really the closest analog we've got here to the one twin that has the telepathic powers.
Right.
And then the other one is what again?
Super speed.
Right, speed. Okay.
Yeah.
And their names for themselves are Quick Kid and Brain Man.
Yes.
Right? And they have letters on their chest, so he has BM, and they make a big joke about that.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to say, as a kid, I was not familiar with BM.
No, this was a joke
thing.
for the grown-ups. This is why I'm telling you. This is like, this show was definitely doing
many
things.
levels, yeah.
Yeah, and my parents, again, this was one that my parents were just visiting and they were watching it with us. Uh-huh. And this was the only show out of this lineup where they audibly laughed at least 5 times during this episode. Like, this was funny.
Yeah. So, yeah, what starts to happen is, if it wasn't already obvious from the sort of slapdash setup, it's a dream. It's a sort of Twilight Zone type episode.
But we don't know that yet. There isn't any real indication that that's what's going on, because what it does at the beginning is they have that kind of hokey scene where they make a wish, which, like you said, it was like, this is kind of hokey and bad, but then it turns into this parody, and it's really smart and funny, I think. And then as we're going along in the episode, I kept being like, man, where are they going to go with this? Like, how are they going to end this? Because they don't have superpowers from now on, right? And it was so broad it's not just like they have superpowers and the other people around them are like, what's going on? They're a little weird. They have superpowers or we have to hide it. No. You've got Mr. Mosby also has superpowers. He also made a wish, but he wished to be an evil supervillain. Yeah. So now he is going around like in Despicable Me sort of ways and he's got multiple powers. He can control other people's minds and he is controlling the minions. He's like creating minions of the hotel staff.
Yeah. So let's pause on that for a second. So that's kind of what I meant when I said that it starts to seem like a dream logic or like a Twilight Zone vibe. It is when Mosby, this sort of antagonist, maitre d' guy, concierge guy, when he starts to be a supervillain too, that's where I go like, okay, so this is just like the whole world is sort of coming undone.
Right. And I was at that point kind of thinking like, maybe this is, this is the game they're playing. They're like in the hotel, it's a Saturday, and they're playing pretend. Yeah. And this is what they're doing. And they're imagining that he's the supervillain, and they're using all these things that have happened in their real world, but we're only hearing it from the we're playing pretend with them story. That's kind of where I thought it was going for most of this time.
The thing I can compliment it on is the effect of Mr. Mosby doing his like brainwash vision, right, where in order to brainwash people, he doesn't just do the Jedi mind trick hand wavy thing. He like shoots something out of his eye. Yeah,
he's got yellow beams, green beams, I think purple beams, and one other color beam. And the yellow beams that he shoots out of his eyes, those are the brainwashing beams.
Yeah, and so it's just kind of like crappy early 2000s CGI, as you would think, but it's actually done kind of well, and they give him these sort of bright, glowing eyes, whoever it is that he's zapping, and considering...
And then it shows their brain, or like a CGI brain kind of overlaid on their head, where it's like he, through his eyes, is speaking directly into their brain, and then they just sort of repeat back whatever he says for them to do.
Yeah, exactly. And so considering this is obviously just quick, cheap CGI stuff, I thought that they did a pretty good job with that. And so, yeah, we do get this sort of plot where, like you said, Mosby is going around like recruiting minions. There's another adult character who is like the maintenance man, who sort of factors into this.
Yeah, he turns the bellboy and the engineer, the maintenance guy, into minions. And then eventually he turns London, Brenda Song's character, into a minion as well. But his whole point is that he's trying to build an amplifier gun ray thing for his green ray vision, because his green ray vision, when he shoots it at kids, turns them into mini adults.
Yes,
he can't stand kids. He wants them all to be more grown up.
Yeah, exactly. His invention is the adultifier, and the way that they visualize this, if you get shot with the adultifier or with his adultifying vision, and you're a child, you don't become an adult. You become yourself wearing a business suit.
Yes.
And you speak with the voice of an adult, right, dubbing your...
I don't think that kid was... I thought that kid was just going like this and talking in his man voice.
To me, that sounded like they took a guy and dubbed in the voice. But yeah, it's a funny gag, I guess.
And so he no longer wants to play because he's got to go to a meeting, and I've got to go talk about the investments or whatever. Yeah. So off he goes out the door with his briefcase and his suit, and that's like one of their friends. That's kind of a recurring character. He's like the Gibby in this show. Yeah. But the Mosby also has purple rays, and those are tickles that will tickle you. Yeah. And then I don't remember what the other color is, what the other color does. But the whole point of this, of recruiting the engineer, is that the engineer is going to build this amplifier weapon that Mosby can look into that will amplify his green rays, and they can shoot it up at a shiny, like reflecting tower building, and it will put the green rays over the whole city, and every child in the city will immediately become adultified.
No, you're right. This is very much like the 60s Batman, where like the two villains team up, or even like
a Phineas and Ferb, like, what are we going to do this afternoon kind of a thing.
Yeah. Now, this whole time, Ashley Tisdale, she's like at summer camp or something?
Yeah, she's a counselor at a summer camp, and one of the Sprouse brothers, like one of the two twins, is just thinks she's super hot and has a big crush on her. Yeah. Okay. And so he's always wanting to have an excuse to call her, but now he has a full excuse to call her because they need help. Yeah.
And they are vastly different ages, right? But that it's just supposed to be cute that he's like, she's like 18 and he's like 10.
Yeah, I don't think they're as far apart as you think they are. I think that because the boys are in that like early middle school and she's in early high school, they seem really far apart.
Okay.
But like Brenda Song is married to Macaulay Culkin, who is our age.
Yeah.
And Brenda Song is about the same age as Ashley Tisdale. So and these kids
are much younger.
Right? Like these kids are in their 20s. But that's what I'm saying. I think she's probably like, she's probably mid 30s, early 30s, right?
I guess.
And they're definitely in their late 20s now.
I think they're children in this and she's a teenager. That's how it comes across to me.
But I think they're probably only about 4 or 5 years apart.
Fair enough. But that's going to be the sort of like climax of this, right? Is her getting kidnapped, tied to the railroad tracks or something by Mr. Mosby. He says he's trying to distract them.
So they've figured out his plan, and they've been able to kind of foil it all along with all of their powers, because with the two of them, and they realize what he is after. So in order to power this amplify adultifier gun thing, it only runs on diamonds. Yes. So they are protecting London because in this show, London's family owns the hotel. So she's super rich. So she has these like giant diamonds that she's polishing, and she's named them like Tina and something else. Right. And so they're protecting London so he can't come turn London into a minion and make her give him her diamonds. So he ties up their mom and ties up Maddie, like kidnaps them both, so that the twins, the super twins, will have to be distracted and they won't be able to protect London anymore.
Standard maneuver for a Batman villain or Spider-Man villain or something. Kidnap the girlfriend.
Or the mom.
This mom you mentioned when we were watching it, I used to have hair like that. I feel like I'm just now, being the age I am, starting to absorb like 21st century styles that are completely in the past. Like
the
really
spiky short bob that who is it that the girl from Garbage and Vitamin C?
Yeah, well,
they both had that hair.
What are the prominent examples of this? Because it almost is like a sort of like Eliza Minnelli, like that kind of a thing.
Yeah, it was a little bit longer. It's like a lob.
Yeah, like a
and
Joan
we would
Jett.
put, but not because Joan Jett had the short on top.
That was a little
right?
different.
So this, we would put like gel, like actual gel, not like mousse, in the ends to make it spiky. And I would get the got to be glued, that yellow tube with like the, kind of purpley writing and the silver lid. And I would put a little dollop in my palm and I'd rub it together, rub it in between my fingers. And then I'd just go up from like underneath my ears into my hair and straight out.
All right.
And I would do it. And so there were
Rinse
layers.
and repeat.
Yep. And then I would do it with the top layers as well and try to get just the ends sort of spiky. The mom in this had bangs. I didn't have full on bangs. I had sort of side swept bangs and I would spike those out too. But this was my look.
It's also
basically from like 2006-7. This is 2007. Like this was my first Facebook profile picture in like 2006, 2007. I had this hair.
Yeah. It's the hair, and it's also, I think, left over from the late 90s, the dark, like some dark makeup, I don't know, there's just like a darkness to the like makeup, to the presentation, I feel like.
Yeah, well, and we don't do as heavy of eyeliner. Like the smoky eye was still real dark.
It's not like a fresh-faced look. It feels like very
We
made
didn't
up.
do dewy skin. We just had dewy skin because we were young.
So yeah, I guess I'm just saying that this mom, good-looking woman, but just like very sort of specific, dated kind of vibe that she comes across. So yeah, they have to save her. There's a joke where the quick one, he pulls a hammy because he forgot to stretch.
Right.
There's just a lot of kind of, it is like you're saying, like the end of a Batman thing. They kind of fight the bad guys, right?
So they rescue Maddie and tie up the bellboy who was there, and then they rescue the mom, or, they each do the rescuing, one each. And so the other one rescues the mom and ties up the engineer. And so then they go back, and London's been turned into a minion, and she's feeding diamonds into the machine. And then at the last second, they hold up the mirror, and it sends the adultifier ray back on Mr. Mosby himself. And they were like, I wonder what happens when an adultifier ray hits an adult. Yeah. And he turns into a huge baby, and they laugh and laugh and laugh. And then it goes to commercial, and we come back from commercial, and they're out on the steps again. And his brother's like, you're crazy. What are you talking about?
There's
That's
a coda
not true.
in their dream before they wake up, where once they've defeated the bad guys, their mom is like, okay, now that you're superheroes.
Oh, right. You have to do all these good things.
Here's your list of things you have to do. She's like, in fact, right now.
She gives them, because they have been following the rule book about like, nobody can know. We have to we have to do good things and whatever. And like, with great power comes great responsibility. They had been like, Cody, I think, was the one who was saying like, we have to follow this rule book. And the Zach just wanted to like run and get snacks for himself or whatever. And so, so then the mom's like, sorry, like, this is your life now.
Attacking City Hall right now that you have to like vanquish.
They're like, but we want ice cream.
Yeah. And so their way of like avoiding these responsibilities is like, okay, let's turn back time like Superman did in Superman 1. Let's go race around the world, and that'll reverse time. But
we
then
can go back and unwish the wish.
Yeah, but they go too far and end up in dinosaur
times.
Oh, that's
right. They end up
So this is our second Dinosaurs.
They're running away from
shows.
Dinosaurs. That's right. That's when we go to commercial, and then we come back.
Yes, then we come back and we have the final coda where it was all a dream. I'm surprised that they even acknowledged the reality that a dream would mean only one of them would know about it.
But
I would think in this world they both have dreams.
So crazy, right? Because then you have the moments, which like I was expecting, right, where they go back inside and they see the adultifier gun, and the guy who was the minion, the engineer minion, is like, oh yeah, it's my supersonic toilet plunger.
He goes, you'd think they'd never seen an atomic toilet plunger before.
And then he's like, no, I know what this is. It's an adultifier. We defeated Mosby. Look, and that's where I was like, oh, this is like, this, was making me think about the whole idea of like the make-believe that they were doing on their fun day and whatever, and they had seen that thing. But the show says, oh no, it was all a dream. Only one of the kids had it, and nobody else believes him, and they think it's funny. And then something else happens. So we end on that like, or was it kind of moment.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're kind of convincing me in terms of like, I didn't realize, obviously, like all this stuff, like we keep saying, it's playing on Superman, Batman, whatever. I didn't really think about the 60s Batman thing and how it is kind of like that. But at the same time, the overall like pitch of the humor of this show, I still find a little irritating. And to me, it does, like you mentioned iCarly, the difference is like iCarly and like those kids are older and they're really good. Like they can handle the stuff. Whereas with this one, it's almost more like Three Men and a Baby, where they have to like, get these kids on and off. They're sort of the center of it ostensibly, but they really need these other people to support it because these kids are just not capable enough. And
I think time would tell you that that's not true.
Yeah, maybe
just because of
maybe.
the,
Longevity of it.
Yeah, I mean, like the one kid was in Riverdale.
Yeah, fair enough. But I guess, I mean, I don't love all of the Nickelodeon type shows, even the ones that lasted a long time. And
fair enough. But I was not expecting to be impressed. This is my favorite show in this lineup.
All right. Well, to that end, let's look back on it. The superhero, superpowers, sitcoms, like I said, I don't really think this was our strongest lineup. They overlapped in certain interesting ways, but also a little random. So what do we think?
Okay, so I thought this was a fun lineup because it's the broad is baked in. We knew it was going to be that way when you were picking shows like Gilligan's Island, Dinosaurs, and The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. You know it's going to be ridiculous. When your Bewitched episode is starring Paul Lynde, you know it's going to be broad. I mean, it's Paul Lynde, for God's sake. So I think the lineup lived up to its campiness. And like I've said now multiple times, favorite show and biggest surprise, Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Yeah, maybe the reason why it bums me out a little bit is because I was into superhero stuff as a kid. And so, expecting that there's going to be all that goofiness and sort of like inanity of the sitcom version of it, I still am hoping for, maybe more of those tropes. I think as much as it's interesting, the fact that Gilligan's Island ended up being like this condition that they got from vegetables, that they had to eat soap, and like that Bewitched spent so much time, just kind of like sitting around with Arthur. Like I was, I guess, maybe hoping for more of the sort of down the middle, like, oh, Darren turns into Superman for a day and he flies around and,
But see, that to me would be so boring.
I mean, maybe it would. But, I guess it just sort of like zigzagged a little, like sort of off the track of what I expected maybe. And then, like, on the back half, like, the dinosaurs and the Sweet Life, like, they're just, I don't know, they're just so silly. Like that, the Earl Sinclair thing, like, in some ways, I guess I like the best because just the sight of that dinosaur dressed up in the superhero outfit and everything.
It is so baffling to me that I was like, I guess we have to do this superhero episode because Jay wants to do the superhero episode. And I wound up liking the shows and finding more. And maybe it's because I went in like not excited about it and you went in excited about it that we sort of ended up flipping around on the opinions. Yeah,
because again, like all of them were sort of fun, like everything you would expect. Like, Paul Lynde is fun and Bewitched and, Gilligan for what that is. I see what you're saying about the Sweet Life. And in that way, that was kind of the best of how it took those tropes from the Batman show and stuff. But at the same time, just like I said before, it had that sort of like subpar Nickelodeon Disney Channel humor to me that was just like the aggressive laugh track, the like everything they do.
Again, we watched this with other people and who laughed out loud, legitimately like belly laughs at least 5 times along with the laugh track. And we laughed out loud at least 2 of those 5 with Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. It was a good show. Have fun. Everybody go watch some Sweet Life.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm not going to die on this hill. Good times, superpowers for one and all. So much for the radioactive vegetables and other cataclysmic events. What are we talking about next week?
Next week, it's all about our 15 minutes of fame. We're going to watch Kate and Allie, Season 4, Episode 10, Stage Mother. Then we're going to watch Wings, Season 8, Episode 14, Just Call Me Angel. And another shot of Jane Curtin with Third Rock from the Sun, Season 2, Episode 23, 15 Minutes of Dick. And finally, 30 Rock, Season 4, Episode 7, Deal Breakers.
Yep. 15 Minutes of Fame is next week, and until then, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.